Every aircraft in this world has a unique identity, just like your passport. Imagine two aircrafts that look exactly the same airline, same model, and same color. So, how does aviation identify them separately? The answer lies in something called aircraft nationality and registration marks, the aviation equivalent of a number plate. Let's learn. Let's start with the basic question: what is aircraft nationality? Aircraft nationality is the country of registration of that particular aircraft. And the aircraft registration mark is something that separates that aircraft from the other aircrafts in the airspace. As you can see in this slide, we have the marking of Victor Tango Alpha Bravo Charlie on the plane and Victor Tango Alpha Alpha on this balloon. So these are the markings that separate these flying objects from the other flying objects in the airspace. The procedures for these markings are set by the ICAO Annex 7 for the contracting states, and these are used as the radio call signs by the aircraft, and these signs are assigned to the state of registry by the ITU. So ITU stands for International Telecommunication Union. This is a United Nations specialized agency which is responsible for the global radio frequency spectrum allocation. So they allocate the spectrum for satellite orbits coordination, international telecom standards, and assigning call signs series to countries for aviation, maritime, amateur radio, etc. For Indian aviation, the radio call signs are prefixed with Victor Tango, as we saw in the previous slide. And the range 4YA to 4YZ belongs to ICAO and is used internationally for non-national stations. So this range of call signs are reserved by the ICAO for different purposes. These radio call signs do not belong to a particular country. During situations where two or more countries are performing some joint operations, that is when reserved radio call signs are used. So this Annex 7 sets standards for use of different letters, numbers, and other graphical symbols combined, and these are to be used as the nationality and the registration marks. There are rules set out for the location of these characters, for the size of these characters, depending on the airborne vehicle. This annex also includes a certificate of registration to help the contracting states and in preparing their own certificate. So they have a template according to which the participating countries prepare their own certificate of registration. Here are some of the rules regarding the identification plate. An aircraft shall carry an identification plate which contains at least the nationality or the common mark and the registration mark. So common mark when it is in a joint operation performed by multiple countries. As we saw, the registration marks reserved by ICAO, which starts from 4YA to 4YZ. These plates should be made up of a fireproof material. They should be secured near the main entrance of the aircraft, and for a balloon, for an unmanned free balloon, the plate should be affixed to the exterior payload. And for remotely piloted aircraft, these identification plates should be present near the entrance or on the exterior of the aircraft if there is no entrance. So this is how an identification plate looks like. As you can see, this is made up of a metal and mostly a fireproof material, so that during a crash or during an accident, this is preserved so as to identify the aircraft and proceed accordingly. Alright, now let's talk about the registration mark of an aircraft. Think of it just like the number plate of your car. Every aircraft in this world must have a unique identification, and that's what the registration mark provides. The registration mark can contain letters, numbers, or a combination of both. However, there's a small rule that it must contain at least one character and at most 5 characters. For example, if we take an Indian aircraft with the mark Victor Tango Alpha Bravo Charlie, Victor Tango is the nationality mark and Alpha Bravo Charlie is the registration mark assigned to that specific aircraft. Now, who decides this registration mark? It is assigned by the state of registry, meaning the country where the aircraft is registered. In India, this authority is the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, the DGCA. And in some special cases, a common mark registering authority can assign the mark when multiple states share an aircraft registry. Now, here's an interesting rule. Certain combinations cannot be used as registration marks because they might create confusion in the aviation communication. For example, communications reserved in the International Code of Signals, the ICS, or the Q code cannot be used. These are used for emergency purposes. They have a different meaning. So the distress and urgency signals must be avoided as registration marks. You definitely don't want an aircraft flying around with something that looks like a distress message, right? So examples that cannot be used include the SOS, the International Distress Signal, the XXX, which is historically used for urgency messages, the PAN used in PAN urgency calls, and the TTT that's used for safety messages. So the idea is simple. An aircraft identification should never be mistaken for an emergency signal or a communication code, and that's why these combinations are strictly prohibited in aircraft registration marks. Here you can see the aircraft nationality and registration mark on an aeroplane and a balloon. So on the aeroplane we have Victor Tango Tango Victor Alpha. Out of this, the Victor Tango identifies the country of registration, which is India, and then the remaining characters identify the aircraft. Those are the registration marks of the aircraft. Here are the rules for the measurements of these marks. We have different rules for the heavier than air aircrafts and the lighter than air aircrafts. The heavier than air aircraft, as the name says, these are heavier than the air around them. They cannot float on their own. They fly because the air moving over the wings creates lift. Examples include aeroplanes, helicopters, gliders, and jets. If the engine and the lift stop, they cannot stay in the air. So those are the heavier than air aircrafts. Similarly, the lighter than air aircrafts are those which are lighter than the air around them. They float naturally in the air, just like a balloon. They use hot air or gases like helium to rise. They do not need wings to create lift. Examples include the hot air balloons and airships. So for the heavier than air aircrafts, the marking should be on the wings, and the height of the mark shall be at least 50 centimeters, so that the mark is clearly visible given the size of the aircraft. When the mark is on the fuselage, the vertical tail surface, or any equivalent surface, it should be at least 30 centimeters. Each letter and number in the mark shall be of equal height. And for the lighter than air aircraft, for unmanned free balloons, the size of the mark is determined by the state of registry, taking into account the size of the payload. If the payload has a bigger size, the marking has to be bigger in size, so that the marking is clearly differentiable from the payload. And for other lighter than air aircraft, the height of the mark shall be at least 50 centimeters. These were some of the basic rules regarding the measurements of the marks. Regarding the certificate of registration, in India it is issued by the central government. Remember, the certificate of registration in India is issued by the central government. It contains the following info: the aircraft type, the constructor's name, year of manufacture, nationality and registration marks, owner details, and the validity period. For a leased aircraft, the registration certificate contains lease validity, names, nationalities, and addresses of the lessor and the lessee. Now, what are the rules behind the cancellation of the registration of certificate? Why do we even need to cancel the certificate of registration? So these are the rules regarding the cancellation of the registration of certificate. In any case, only DGCA has the authority to cancel. If the registration breaks any rules, if false info was provided to obtain the certificate, or if it was found that it is more suitable to register the particular aircraft in any other country, The one of the example could be an aircraft that is frequently flying from a different country. uh, it is better to register that aircraft in that country. So that's when the current registration has to be cancelled and it has to be re-registered in the other country. Or if the aircraft has been destroyed or withdrawn from use, any aircraft that has been destroyed or is currently not in use, the registration certificate has to be cancelled. A few more examples of this scenario where it is more suitable to register that aircraft in a different country could be a business jet that is registered in India with a particular mark, but in reality the owner lives abroad and the aircraft is based permanently outside of India, and it is operated and maintained and flown mainly in another country, and the Indian authorities have no effective control or oversight that aircraft. And in that case, the aircraft is not genuinely Indian operated. It would be more suitable to be registered in the country where it is actually based and operated. So DGCA can cancel the Indian registration. DGCA can also cancel the aircraft's registration if keeping it registered in India is against the public interest. An example could be an aircraft registered in India as Victor Tango Alpha Bravo Charlie and is found to be regularly used for illegal charter operations, or it is carrying passengers without the required permissions, or it is repeatedly violating the safety regulations. So despite warnings, the operator continues the unsafe and illegal operations. So in this situation, the DGCA may decide that allowing this aircraft to remain registered in India can endanger the public safety and damage India's aviation reputation. So the registration needs to be cancelled. These were few scenarios where the aircraft registration can be cancelled by the DGCA. Now, when an aircraft is under lease, we will understand more about the lease, lessor, and lessee in the upcoming slides. But when an aircraft is under lease, the cancellation of registration happens when the lease expires or the lease is terminated by either the lessor or the lessee, or the lease is itself terminated due to the terms of the lease, or the expiry of the certificate of airworthiness of the aircraft. In these scenarios, the registration of an aircraft under lease is cancelled. All right. Now let's understand something very important, which is the register of aircraft, the document that holds the registration of the aircrafts. Think of it as a master database for all aircrafts. Every aircraft that is registered in India is recorded and maintained by the DGCA. The register contains all the key details you see on the certificate of registration, like the aircraft's identity, the owner, the registration mark, etc. And here's something interesting. The register is not secret. It is actually open to public, and you can even access it online through the DGCA's website. Now, coming to nationality and registration marks in the register, in India, civil aircraft use the prefix VT. So you will see markings like VT, EPC, or Victor Tango Alpha Bravo Charlie, or something like that. The Air Force aircrafts use VU, and unmanned aircraft follow a completely different format, starting with U followed by 6 alphanumeric characters. They can be letters or numbers, those 6 characters. Now let's talk about how these marks are displayed. They are not just stickers. They must be painted or permanently fixed on the aircraft. Also, the aircraft must carry a nameplate that includes the owner's full name and address. And very importantly, these marks must always be clean and clearly visible, because in aviation, identification is everything. So if you cannot clearly see the registration mark, the aircraft is not compliant. Now let's talk about something that many people don't realize, that you cannot just put anything you want on the aircraft, right? There are strict rules on what markings are allowed on an aircraft. First, advertisements and random signs are not allowed on the aircraft unless specifically approved by the DGCA. So, unlike cars, you cannot just decorate the aircraft freely. Now, can the owner put their name or logo on the aircraft? Yes, but with conditions. The shape, size, color, and placement must be such that they do not interfere with the aircraft's registration marks. Next, a very important restriction, a civil aircraft cannot use markings that are meant for the state or the military aircraft. This is very crucial for security and identification. And finally, what about national flags? Yes, aircraft can display national flags or colors, but they must be placed carefully so that they do not look like military aircraft markings. So aircraft markings are not for decoration, they are strictly controlled for safety, identification and security. Now let's understand a very important concept in aviation, which is leasing. Most people think airlines own all the aircrafts, but that's not true. A large number of aircraft that you see flying are actually leased. So what is leasing? A lease is simply an agreement where one party, called the lessor, gives an aircraft to another party called the lessee to use for a specific period or number of flights. Now, who does what? The lessor is the owner, they provide the aircraft. The lessee is usually the airline that operates the aircraft. And this is very important. The lessee must have full operational control over the aircraft. That means the lessee will provide the pilots and cabin crew. They handle the ground operations, they manage the entire flight operation. The lessee is responsible for operating the aircraft. Now, coming to India, there is a special place called the Gift City in Gujarat, the GIFT. It is India's International Financial Services Center, the IFSC, where the aircraft leasing companies are set up. These companies are regulated by the International Financial Services Centers Authority, the IFSCA. Why is this important? Because India is trying to become a global hub for aircraft leasing, and thus, instead of depending on foreign leasing companies, they want to handle their own leasing. Remember, in leasing, the owner gives the aircraft, but the airline or the lessee controls and operates the aircraft. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you like the content. If you have any doubts, please do add them in the comment section. Please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.